Hey, Blondeguygamer here with my Halloween review. The most scary costume I could think of. My old camera self. Well, of course it is now way past Halloween, but it wouldn't be a Blondeguygamer review if my intended Halloween review was in the middle of November. Better late than never! In any case, I still like to show a game that I feel is pretty appropriate for Halloween, and to give you all time to track it down for next year. And that's Illbleed for the Dreamcast. Yet another game that SCR actually gave me. I guess he gave me this to not feel bad about giving me all those Sega CD games.
While Illbleed is classified as a survival horror game, it's not really a traditional survival horror. And while it doesn't take place during Halloween, the overall theme and setting still make it perfect for some cheesy fun we can all admit we enjoy during that time of year to counterbalance the stuff that really does scare us.
I guess the first question you all have, unless you already know about this game, is how exactly does Illbleed play out?
The game centers around a theme park called Illbleed, which its attractions are based off of B-movie horror films that you reenact as you go through them, all the while being constantly berated by several traps designed to scare the living piss out of your character, with some traps literally trying to kill you. Think of it as a combination of Universal Studios, cheesy horror movies, and Itchy and Scratchy Land.
The violentest place on Earth!
So because of the nature of the game, logic need not apply here, as the game is purposely portraying B-movie tropes, and the whole game plays out as movies within a movie, basically. You'll notice this immediately once you start the game and get into the characters and story. The said story of how all this plays out centers around Eriko, a young horror movie buff who is also head of her friend's horror movie club. After giving a speech about being subjected to scares from her father that ran a horror traveling caravan in her past, Eriko meets up with their friends. These include Kevin, a typical teenage guy, Randy, a guy who looks like Brock on steroids who also talks like a 90s stoner, and finally there's Michelle, the spiritual girl of the group. Michelle comes in with tickets to Illbleed, in which the game's fictional horror director and park creator, Michael Reynolds, is offering $100 million to anyone that can survive, go through all the attractions in the park. Everyone is pumped to go except for Eriko, who's hesitant.
What, you're being skeptical just because there's a huge reward for simply going through a park? Oh, come on, what's the worst that could happen? It can't be as bad as Disney's California Adventures.
Regardless, Eriko's friends go without her, but after a few days they are still presumably in the park, and Eriko decides the only option is to go into Illbleed and find out what happened. After getting some directions from the gate workers' subtitles, we get to control Eriko for the first time, which is pretty simple. You move with the analog stick, though you have to tap the stick to get the character to run, and while you can't control the camera directly, you can change it between two follow and semi-follow settings, as well as center the camera with the left trigger. While it's a little stiff compared to more modern games, the camera still does a decent job overall, considering it's a Dreamcast game. After getting used to the movement and camera, we go to this cemetery area that we were given directions to learn how everything else works. One key factor of the game is your senses, which is represented by the pulsating indicators at the top of the screen. Whenever sight, hearing, or smell is triggered, it means there's a trap nearby that will frighten and or hurt your character, which can cause loss of health, bleeding, and increased heart rate, all of which the character can die from. To counteract these, you use what's called a horror monitor, which you use the right trigger to go into first person and use the character's adrenaline to search suspected areas for these traps. If successful, you'll avoid the trap and even get back some of the spent adrenaline. But if you search every single area, you'll simply find nothing most of the time and quickly run out of adrenaline. Then you won't be able to stop the rest of the traps until you get more adrenaline. So you have to try and make sure which areas are trapped, judging on your senses to search the correct areas. There's also your sixth sense, which usually indicates an item to grab, but it's also for enemy attacks, so be cautious depending on where the sixth sense is triggered. The aforementioned items are either conventional to restore your character's health, bleeding, heart rate, and adrenaline, or key items that are used for area puzzles, or benefit the character throughout the level. After learning the basics, you can explore the rest of the place, which has a store to buy items, a souvenir photo shop to save your game, which you can also save in photo booths placed throughout the levels, and an ER center to restore your character's health properties, and even upgrade them once you have the necessary items and money. The main levels of the game are accessed in these movie theaters, complete with movie posters, which you have to go through one by one. The first movie you have to go through is Home Run of Death. What's it about? Well, I'll let the narrator explain.
You play a sport, a game, knowing full well that you're going to either win or lose. You never expect to die before your dreams come true. Neither did Jimmy or his father, Gail Banbalo, a Minnesota innkeeper. he set up a secret baseball practice arena in the basement of his inn, where he and his son practiced day after day. Jimmy's hard work and batting skill finally led his team to a state victory. It started out a crisp spring day, but before Jimmy could go outside to play, he and his dad went downstairs to bat the ball around a few times. Upstairs, some teenagers had been playing with fire, turning the inn into a raging blaze that was soon out of control. The inn was a total loss, and so was Jimmy, burned in minutes. Mr. Banbala was so badly maimed, he turned into a hideous monster, oozing and bleeding, snarling and growling like a beast, enraged and bent on revenge. He tracked down the kids responsible for the fire and killed them one by one with a blowtorch. That wasn't enough for Banbalo. He won't leave his inn or his memories, so there he waits, in ambush.
Then we're giving our goals for the time it takes, remaining health, remove traps, heart rate, etc. for the best possible money reward at the end. And if any of those criteria aren't met, money will be deducted from those conditions. After that, we choose our character, even though we can only pick Eriko at the moment. Once we start, the first thing we want to do right away is find the horror monitor, which you find when all the senses are triggered at once. Then it's simply a matter of going through the motel without taking too much damage and finding items and clues. Even though there's a time goal, it's best to try and take your time in some parts to carefully find traps, because if you rush ahead, you'll most likely trigger the traps before you can stop to deactivate them. One thing to keep in mind is that running actually increases bleeding and you won't lower your heart rate, but walking or standing still will make them eventually go down. But again, it wastes precious time. Even in the menu, time still passes, so try not to linger too long. The main goal of this level is to find memorabilia of the deranged motel's manager's deceased son, which includes, appropriately, a baseball bat.
Jimmy! Jimmy, it's time for practice! Get out to the training field now! Hey, you're not Jimmy!
Okay, a talking bat. That's just weird. I mean, where'd they come up with that idea?
Yeah, that's just really creepy.
I know, right?
Since we now have a weapon, we can now effectively fight enemies, which you can run into occasionally. Whenever you do, you are confined in an area, and you can either fight the monster, preferably if you have a weapon, which you can use the Y button, or the right trigger if you have a ranged weapon, or escape via helipad by mashing the B button on top of it. If you choose to stick around and fight, keep in mind that you can't use items during combat, but you do have an evasive dodge by pressing the A button, which actually makes you invulnerable briefly. The overall combat may seem a little awkward at first, but with some practice you can effectively fight off monsters, which rewards you with adrenaline. But fighting does risk the loss of health and bleeding, so if you are high with adrenaline, it's best to just escape the minor confrontations. In fact, you're forced to escape in some boss encounters since you can't kill him yet until later in the level. Still, the combat is pretty engaging once you get used to it. So once you get used to everything, it's up to you to guide Eriko through the motel, confront the manager, and complete the level with an interesting twist. Then it's off to the rest of the movies. But don't forget to rescue Eriko's friends as well if you get to them in time, which you can then play as them in later levels too. Overall, the gameplay is quite engaging and unique in the survival horror genre. The amount of traps throughout the level is astounding, to the point where you almost want to purposely take damage to see them all. The combat is a bit awkward at first, but manageable, and the level design is thankfully not too complex, though you are given a map that can be helpful at times. The different amount of levels also has a nice amount of variety, as there's even a level that doesn't even have any traps or use the horror monitor to switch things up. The graphics are a bit dated, but for a late Dreamcast game, it's quite good, with some nice detail, and it runs at a nice smooth frame rate. Though character animations can be a little awkward at times, especially during cutscenes, but it's still a nice looking game. The overall theme of cheesy and gory horror, along with the intentionally bad voice acting and story, makes it feel like you're playing a B-movie horror film, or rather an homage to them, which the game does a great job in capturing.
If you want a different take on survival horror that doesn't take itself too seriously, then I highly recommend this game for anyone that has a Dreamcast, if you can find it, that is. Well, this diversion was fun while it lasted, but I still need to get to Midnight Raiders, so keep an eye out for that. But until then, this is Blondeguygamer. Thanks for watching.
I'd use the money for a chainsaw and hack my way into fame and fear. Ha ha!
Oh, brother.